Welcome back to the Full Force Fathers podcast, episode number 80. We have hit another decade. We're closing in on the century mark, 1 week at a time. So, big show today. Today is race preview episode. This is a special edition of the Full Force Fathers podcast. Dave wanted to do a little Q&A with me because my race is 4 days away.
Yeah, I don't know how many of our listeners have ever competed in an ultra. I haven't, so I'm intrigued at some of the things that are probably going on in your mind right about now. So we'll get into that in just a little bit.
Yeah, but anyway, so you jump in. We have number 80. That's a big number. There's some, there's no spoiler alert. It's all football, but it is a huge number. But go right in, jump right in, Dave. Let us know about some number 80s, and we'll discuss them as we go along.
Yeah, we're going to save the greatest for last, and I'll tell you why. It's because we're going to go through these other number 80s who are absolutely incredible, and their numbers are staggering. But then when you hear the greatest of all time, you're going to be like, holy smokes, he really is the greatest of all time. So anyway, we're going to start with Isaac Bruce. Okay, he's got 4,200-yard games, over 1,000 receptions, over 15,000 yards, 91 touchdowns in 16 years, and he's a Super Bowl winner. It's pretty good. That's pretty good. Part of that Rams team that just, man, they were good.
They were the greatest show on turf was their nickname, and that was the Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. I mean, that team was loaded. And it's actually one of the biggest disappointments, letdowns, whatever you want to say, in Super Bowl history. They were such a heavy favorite when they played the Patriots, and the Patriots defense showed up, and I personally think they choked, because it's not like Brady in his first Super Bowl came out there and was slinging Tom Brady numbers like later in his career. He actually kind of sucked, and the defense carried that team. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they beat the Titans in one of the great Super Bowls that we have seen, especially the finish with Dyson reaching out for the line and coming up short, and then you have him, and they come back. They missed the year in the middle. In between the two, I don't know. I think it was a Warner injury or something for the reason why they didn't go back to back. And then to come back the following year, even better than they were in '99, and to lose that Patriots team was crazy.
Yeah, it really was. And so Isaac Bruce makes the list. A little bit of a blast here from the past. Older guy, Steve Largent. When he retired, he held the following records. Okay, receptions, 819. Consecutive games with a reception, 177. He's got over 13,000 receiving yards. He had 100 touchdowns and 8 1,000-yard seasons. He was also a 3-time All-Pro and a 7-time Pro Bowler. Now those records have since been beat, but when he went into the Hall of Fame, he held all of those records.
Yeah, no, another great all-timer. The one that stands out to me is the 177 straight games with a catch. Like, dude, people have bad days, right? Quarterbacks have bad days. You could have had I'm sure he didn't play with the same quarterback for 177 straight, or an injury. But to think about it, 177, that's the equivalent of 10 NFL seasons in a row of catching at least one pass.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It truly is. It's amazing. Continuing on our list, next is Chris Carter. Most of his career was spent with the Minnesota Vikings. That's where the majority of his success was from. He had over 1,100 receptions, just under 14,000 yards receiving. He was on the all-decade team of the 90s. He had 42 as well, 100-yard games, just like Isaac Bruce. And he led the NFL in receiving touchdowns for 3 seasons with the Vikings.
So Chris Carter's interesting. He would be historically greater if he didn't play at the same time as a particular wide receiver we're going to mention here in a couple minutes. And the other thing about Chris Carter's greatness is everyone forgets he was Randy Moss's mentor, the great. You could argue the most talented wide receiver to ever play in terms of size, speed, hands, ability. He mentored Randy Moss when Moss came into the league. And Chris Carter, by the Vikings drafting Randy Moss, actually hurt his production because Randy Moss was a freak. Think about his numbers, what they would have been, because I think he played a handful of seasons with Moss. So think about that. All those targets, all those yards, all those touchdowns that went to Moss, he would have gotten a bulk of those the statistics if it had not been for Randy Moss coming to the Vikings. Remember how the dynamic duo, those two on the same field with Dante Culpepper slinging it down the field with his freaking massive arm, and Randy Moss was really the first breakneck over the top guy in our generation that we can remember. You know what I mean? He was long. He was like a fucking deer out there. He just outran you. And you know what I mean? It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, he really was. So Chris Carter making the list. Next, we have Kellen Winslow, 541 receptions, 6,700 receiving yards, 45 touchdowns, and 9 seasons. He was an All-Pro in 3 seasons at the tight end position. You might remember his son was also a
Great
tight
bloodline.
end. Kellen Winslow gets the nod here. Yep, yeah, I'd say not too bad at the tight end position.
Except the son didn't really get the brains, unfortunately. But I'll tell you, remember when Kellen Winslow Jr., his son, went to Miami? I mean, he was a beast among men. Yet him and Shockey played at Miami.
Yep. Kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
For sure.
One more before we get to the all-timer. James Lofton, 764 career receptions, just over 14,000 yards. And you may say, that's a lot of yards for not, as many receptions as some of the other guys we've heard. And I put this in here specifically. He had an average of 18.3 yards per catch. That's a big number. 18.3 yards per catch. That's a huge number.
That's a ridiculous number. I mean, you're talking the length of essentially 2 first downs every time he caught the ball. So a fifth of the football field was eaten up every time he touched the ball.
Every time.
It's
amazing.
It's amazing. And I don't know, is there any relation to Kenny Lofton, the great baseball player?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I don't know. You should look that up.
I'll have to Google that.
He also had 4,300 yard games, so pretty solid. I'm going to take us in while you're looking that up. I'm going to start talking about the great one. Now, this is a great one for Brett because, as everybody knows, he is a 49er fan, and the greatest 80 of all time has to be none other than Jerry Rice. Now, we talked about some of the statistics and the numbers that these other guys put up. They're Hall of Famers, all-timers. And when you hear some of the numbers here, it's going to just blow your mind. And then I'll just turn it over to you, and you can just go and tell me all about the fun you had watching him growing up. So, he led the league in receptions 6 times and touchdowns 6 times. He was the all-time leader in receptions, 1,549. How about receiving yards? 22,895 yards. He had 1,000-yard seasons 14 times. He had 208 total touchdowns, and he had combined net yards of over 23,500. So he was an all-pro for 11 straight seasons. He was a part of 13 Pro Bowls over 22 seasons. He played in 8 conference championship games. He was in 4 Super Bowls. He won 3, and he was a Super Bowl MVP once. I'm exhausted. Take it from here.
I mean, it's absurd. It doesn't matter. The statistics are just they never end. He's the GOAT of GOATs, right? He's the greatest football player. A lot of people will say it's Jim Brown, and I'm not going to argue with Jim Brown, but then again, our generation didn't get to see Jim Brown. We saw Jerry Rice, man. We were absolutely just in awe of this guy all the time. When he was on the field, you knew what you were getting every single week. He's literally going to produce every week. The numbers just don't make any sense. And there's an asterisk here, and it drives me nuts. But he does have 1 Super Bowl loss. Can you name the Super Bowl loss that he had?
No.
It was not a 49er loss.
Oh. Okay. I still don't remember
So
who
at
they
the end of
played.
it, at the end of his career, he left
But
when he left the 49ers, he lost in the Super Bowl as a Raider to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
the Raiders. Okay.
So because he left, he
Yeah.
did
So when
not
he was with
everyone
the 49ers, he was 3-0.
he was 3-0 as a Niner. His last Super Bowl being with Steve Young when they beat down the Chargers. Finished his career up because everyone thinks, obviously he's a Niner, he's a Hall of Famer as a Niner, he's the greatest 49ers, he's the greatest football ever, but he did leave the 49ers late when T.O. took over that team as the number one wide receiver. I don't even know how to explain it, dude. The thing that makes me the happiest about Jerry Rice is he didn't come from a big school. He came from a southern school, a small southern school. And he just, him and Montana and then him and Steve Young, they just continued his dominance. He just showed up every week, ready to play. Like I said, the numbers are staggering. I mean, think about that. I think honestly, the most staggering of all the statistics, there's two of them, 8 conference championship games, which you can, we can both root for them and against them because you're a Cowboy fan. I bet you 2 or 3 of those losses were to the Cowboys. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think there was one was a Packer team when Favre won the title towards the end of his career. But 8 conference championships. I mean, that's not Brady. Brady went to 10 out of 11 or 10 out of 12 in a stretch. And also 11 straight all-pro seasons. To be the best player at your position when there's so much talent in the league for 11 years in a row is a staggering number. Just an absolute staggering number. If you think about it. And I think he is definitely the last.
I completely agree with you.
I think he's definitely, I don't want to say this definitely, but I'm pretty sure he's the last wide receiver to win the MVP award. I don't think we've had an MVP as a wide receiver since the year he won it. I don't, like I said, I don't want to put words in my mouth. I mean, as you know now, it's a quarterback only award now. Anyways, they should just literally just name it the quarterback MVP because that's the only people that win it now. I mean, there's everything, and the thing is, he's a Niner. I'm a diehard Niner fan. I grew up watching him, and to see him be the greatest player of all time from my favorite team is pretty cool.
You brought it up, so I'm going to go there. I'm going to find a way to bring the Cowboys into it. But you mentioned the Cowboys had to do with a couple of those losses in those championship games. Was there a better time to be a 49er fan and a Cowboy fan than late 80s for the Niners as they started coming up into the 90s? Mm-hmm. I mean, holy smokes, when you think that you had Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver of all time, on the field, with Emmitt Smith, the all-time leading rusher of all time, on the field, with the likes of Troy Aikman, Steve Young, and or Joe Montana. I mean, wow. Like, there was some unbelievable, legendary talent on the field for years.
I mean, at any given time, there was 10 to 15 first ballot Hall of Famers on the field every time they played, which is just unheard of if you think about it.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely unheard of. Mm-hmm. But I just want to go back because you mentioned something. You want to talk about the good old days, right? Of the Cowboys and the 49ers. Do you want me to blow your mind? I'm gonna list off.
Sure.
I'm gonna list off the NFC champions. Okay, the NFC championship teams, the winner of the National Football Conference since 1985. Okay. This is from the NFC. San Francisco, NFC champion. The Bears were the outlier. After that, Giants, Redskins, Niners, Giants, Redskins, Cowboys, Niners, Cowboys. So for an 11-year stretch or 12-year stretch, there was only 4 teams that won the NFC. And it was 3 NFC East teams and the Niners. That's it.
That's crazy. It's a
crazy statistic.
Those are the good old days.
And I would argue that's just That's just your NFC champion. That's not including who they beat in the NFC championship to get there. That's just who won it. So think about it. How many times did the Niners and the Cowboys and the Giants play in the NFC title game? I mean, it's an absurd number. It's an absurd number.
A lot.
I mean, and if you take out the Bills, because the Bills went to 4 in a row on the AFC side, the parity on that side was just redonkulous, dude. I mean, it was just ridiculous. The AFC was Dolphins, Patriots, Broncos, Bengals, Bills, Chargers, Steelers, Patriots. I mean, just Broncos again.
All over the place.
All over the place. But the NFC was literally completely dominated from the mid 80s to the mid 90s by the Niners, Cowboys, and Giants, and then throw the Redskins in there as well. Just nuts to think about.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, Jerry Rice, if there was a greatest individual player bracket, he's up there. I mean, I don't think he's Wayne Gretzky in terms of dominance of his sport, but he's up there.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, there's your numbers. Let's move on from numbers, because I got a Bible verse that I really, really struck a chord. I heard it from somebody said this on the radio the other day, and I stole it and put it in here. And I think we've actually used it before, but I heard it again, and I was like, I got to use it again. And it comes from Hebrews 12, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11, and it says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." Now, you can slice that any way you want. It comes from the good book. Discipline is the key to everything in your life. If you want to be a loser and unsuccessful and fat, you're pretty disciplined at doing the wrong things. If you want to be wealthy and you want to be fit, then you're pretty disciplined at doing the right things. And it all starts with discipline. I saw something that said discipline equals freedom. I saw that the other day. You need discipline with your fitness. You need discipline in your faith. You need discipline, as you know, in your money. Discipline is one of the key words in history of the English language, if you ask me.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. This Bible verse is so fantastic, and I think it plays truly into what you're getting set to do this upcoming weekend. And you've needed incredible discipline for it. And I would venture to say that it's going to be painful and not pleasant. So, but it is going to give you an accomplishment that I know you've dreamed of for a long time.
Oh my God, yeah.
Why don't we chat a little bit about that, shall we?
I'm ready.
So for those of you who don't know, Brett's got his first 50-mile race this weekend. And like I said, I've never done an ultra. I know you've done one before, but it was a 30-miler. So let's dive in here. It's still ridiculously hot in Tucson, so I know it's not in Tucson. Why don't you tell everybody what the race is and where it is?
So the race that I'm running is called the Saddles 100, like a horse saddle, SADDLE, the Saddles 100. Now, that's the headline name of the event because there is a 100-mile race and there's a 50-miler. So the two races both start at the same time on Saturday, 5 a.m. The gun goes off in Roth. I just run 50 miles of the 100-mile course where the psychos that are running the 100 do 100. So they're doubling what I'm attempting to do. But it is in Prescott, Arizona, which is a little bit up the road, 3.5 hours away. But it's in the mountains. So we're starting at 6,000 feet, which should help with the weather.
That's great. Now, is it point to point or is it a loop?
It is a point-to-point race.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what do they do for the 100-miler?
The 100-mile is a loop. So the way this race is set up, the 50-miler is the first half of the 100-mile loop. So you start at point A, end at point B. The 100-mile is a loop, start at point A, end at point A. As an out and back, but it is closer. It looks like a big counterclockwise circle. So,
okay, this is a two-parter. So, what are you most nervous about going into your first 50-mile race? And then on the flip side, what are you also most excited about? And they could be the same thing. I don't know, but nervous and excited.
Most nervous about it being new. It's new, something new. And I don't know how my body's going to hold up for 50 miles. I don't know, because when you do a 50-mile race or a 100-mile race, you don't ever train that distance in full. You don't put your body through that trauma just to turn right around and put your body through the trauma again. Now, I know my body from training, and I've put a lot of miles in, heavy miles, weight vest miles, mountain miles, and then just long 20-mile run miles in the trails. I know my body's good for that 50K distance, for that first 30, 31. After that, I mean, it's pretty much up in the air as to what my body does. So that's what I'm most nervous about. And I think it's more mental than physical, because I know I'm there, but mentally, to break through the 50K, knowing I have to do another 18 miles to finish the 50-miler, is what I'm most nervous about. What I'm most excited about is, to be honest, it's me. I'm not running this race with anybody. I have no one else that I know there. I have no idea who's there. That's who else has signed up for it. I'm sure I'll meet some people along the way, but what I'm most excited about, it's me versus me in the mountains. And it's what I love the most. As you all know, my favorite thing in the whole world to do is be outside, and being in the mountains is where it's at. So the fact that I'll be out there, starting when the gun goes off at 5 a.m., it's going to be a long time. I'll be out there for a while, and it's just me in a mental battle with myself. That's what I'm most excited about.
Do you have any sort of a time goal for this?
Um,
Or
yeah,
is it just a finish?
finish is always the goal, right? I want to finish. I've never done one before. I want to finish it. Just got to throw myself into that suck and figure it out. But I mean, in a perfect, if I could, I'd like to be done in 12 hours. If I could be done in 12 hours, that means I would be running at a 4-mile-per-hour clip, so you're talking 15-minute miles. That puts you at 48 miles. And I'm sure there's going to be some quicker miles in there, downhill miles, and there's going to be some slower miles when we're trudging up mountain and when you're in the pain cave later half of the race. So, but in a perfect world, 12. Realistic world, because the way I look at it is this: if I could do this in 12, that's a 24-hour pace for a 100-mile race, and that is very hard to do. Most people cannot run a 24-hour race unless you are really, really good in under 24 hours. So 12 would be ideal. And it's what I guess if I had a goal I'm shooting for. 14, I think, is more realistic, with it being my first go round.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds incredible. It's a lot of hours on your feet specifically, and on those legs. What kind of shoes do you wear for something like this?
So I'll be in just I've always run trails in Salomon's, so I'll be in my Salomon my Salomon shoes, my Ultra Glides. They're nice and light. They got a hell of a technical grip on them on the bottom. I train, not for all the shoe nerds out there, I always ran in speed crosses, Salomon speed crosses, but if there's a water crossing or if they get wet, they're just a heavier shoe. They're a better technical, more durable shoe, because they're stronger and built tougher for more technical stuff. But after looking at course maps, this is a 65 to 70% forest course, which means obviously there'll be some rock, but I'm assuming a little bit softer ground, which I won't know because I've never scoped the course or anything like that. So I'll be running in my Ultra Glide, my super light Salomon shoes with a nice gnarly grip on the bottom, but they're like feather light. So,
You worried about blisters or anything like that?
it's gonna happen. There's nothing about it. My feet will look doesn't.
Yeah.
I have the worst.
Did you get them on the 30-mile race? On the 30?
Yeah, a couple. And I actually, on my 25 miler that I did, I actually developed a really, really small one in between two toes, which is kind of strange. But where my big toe and my pointer toe on my right foot were rubbing, I developed a small blister on that. Yeah, no, that's to be expected. Chafing, blisters, you name it. It's all to be expected.
What sort of strategy do you have going in? I mean, are you planning on like power hiking the hills and then sprinting downhill, or like what does that look like?
So yeah, the first 15 miles of this course is uphill. Um, if you look at the topos and you look at the maps and the elevation gain and stuff, the first 15 miles of this race is uphill. You start at about 6,000, you get up to about 7,500, but that's over the course of 15 miles. So in the big grand scheme, there'll be some steeper sections and some not so steep sections, but really it's 150 feet a mile essentially. Um, or 100 feet a mile essentially for that first to get to that 1,500, which is not a lot of elevation gain. But I'm sure there'll be some gnarly steep stuff in the mix, and maybe some not so gnarly steep stuff, more just steady incline and whatnot. So in terms of strategy, yeah, I just want to move. I think that's just constant movement forward is the key. And the reason why I say that is because there are cutoffs with races like this. If you're not averaging 3 miles an hour when you get to the checkpoints, they pull you off course because historically, if you're not averaging a time in the first 20, you're not going to make it up. It's not like you go run a 50 and the first 25 you run slow and the second 25 you sprint. You know what I mean? So my strategy is to just consistently move forward, definitely power hike the uphills and move. In every opportunity, especially depending on the ground underneath my feet, move swiftly when I can on flat and decline, and utilize. The other strategy is I'm going to utilize my nutrition plan that I've been going with. I'm not, a lot of people get to these big races and they get enamored by these beautiful aid stations and they're cooking food and they have all this new shit that, oh my God, and that's where a lot of people go sideways because they break away from what they were using and what worked during their training plan. You never change something like shoes or clothes or hydration pack or food ever on race day if you've never done it before, because you're just asking for a recipe for disaster. So my strategy is to use those aid stations only to refill my water, my bladder, and my Camelback. You know what I mean? I'll have all my own hydration, my own salt, and I plan on carrying enough calories in my bag because I'm wearing my bigger Camelback for it. So I plan on carrying enough calories to get through most of it. And if I end up running into a calorie deficit somewhere, I'll grab a Cliff Bar or something that I know my stomach can handle and not have an issue with while I'm moving. But the big key is salt. Stay salt. The strategy is to make sure I'm putting salt in my body, every couple miles, because that's when you cramp up. It's not because you're tired. Yeah, you can cramp up because you're tired and you're sore and you're muscle fatigue, but you're also going to be dehydrated and your muscles are going to be dehydrated, and that's when the cramping gets nasty. So staying salt, keep being proactive and keeping the salt in your system while you're moving, is a big thing. And that was the big thing in all my long training runs, 20+ mile training runs, was to make sure that I was giving myself salt intake so there was no cramping at all.
We got one more for you. I know Andine and the girls are going to be there with you while you tackle this. You guys are hitching the wagons and heading north. So you've got them there, the support system's there. What does your dream race day look like?
Okay. Let me back up to finish up the strategy part because I remembered something. And then I'll go over dream race day.
Oh.
Part of my strategy
Please do.
Part of my strategy also is to bank as many free minutes as I can. So if I want to run this thing in 12 hours, roughly I got to run 15-minute miles. But every mile that I run under 15, that's going in the bank. Because that shaves because there will be times, and I can guarantee you there's going to be an 18-minute mile thrown in there or a 20-minute mile if it's an uphill mile. You know what I mean? Towards the end of the race. So part of my strategy is when I can bank time, I got to bank time. But dream race day scenario would be to finish in 12 hours, feel good the entire time, not worry about any cramping or if I can get through the race without cramping. Muscle fatigue, I'm fine. Injury free, great. Cramping sucks, and you don't want to cramp. And when I did my 50K a few years back, I was nowhere near in the physical shape I was now, and I remember cramping towards the back end of that race, and it was the most miserable fucking thing in my life. It was awful. you're walking funny, your legs are like locking up if you try to bend over and all that other stuff. So dream race day scenario would be 12 hours or under, and to cross the finish line with all three girls. When I get close to that final half mile or whatever, all three girls come out and just kind of let me limp across the finish line, and they, because I think at that point I'd break down. I probably would break down and lose it just to see, because I want to show them what hard looks like. You know what I mean? They need to see it and teach them some, and also when you go after something, you get it. You know what I mean? You put in the work for something, and if you put in the work, then you're going to get a result, but that's the dream. Sub 12 with the girls crossing the finish line with me is my ultimate dream race day scenario.
That's great. Is there a way for people to follow you on the race?
No clue. I sometimes okay. these races.
Well, then you better just tell your wife that I'm going to be pestering the shit out of her for answers and updates throughout the day. So just make her aware that that's going to happen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no. Some of these races do race tracking, and some of them don't. I don't know. We'll see. I hope there is, because I like people to follow along. No, and I think knowing people are following along will keep me a little bit more motivated in the dark times. Knowing, hey, fuck, Dave's watching online, or so and so's watching, or listening, or tracking. But this, I will have my phone on me because it is a requirement, because you have to have your maps. That's part of an ultra. The race director did say you have to have your phone with your maps open, because there's no guarantees that you don't make a wrong turn. You know what I mean? So you have to have the course map uploaded into your phone.
Yeah.
For safety reasons, right? If you're out in the middle of the fucking woods, you take a wrong turn, you go 5 miles the wrong way. You haven't seen anybody in a while, and you're fucking lost. You know what I'm saying? So, I'll have my phone on me, and I do believe. I do believe, like, if I have my phone on me and I'm out there just kind of cruising along in the middle of the woods by myself and there's service, dude, I'm going to call you. I'll call my dad or something. You know what I mean? If I'm in a low point or whatever. But for the most part, I don't run with music, so it'll just be me and my thoughts for a long time.
12 hours, man. Yeah, don't pull a Goggins and go 7.5 miles, 8 miles in the wrong direction. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't plan on that.
Okay. All right, you want to hit the book recommendation today?
Absolutely. So the book recommendation ties into the race. It's actually it's a duo, and I think I've mentioned both, but it's Born to Run and Born to Run 2. It is a package deal. And the reason why I picked these books, especially Born to Run 1, if you haven't read it, by Chris McDougall, and you're like to run or you don't like to run or you're thinking about getting into running, go read it. That book is the reason why I really turned into wanting to run an ultra or 2 or 3 or however many I ever run in my life. I read the book years ago. And there's a book, a 50-mile run in that book that's based around the Copper Canyons. It's a 50-mile race through the mountains. And ever since I read that book, I always told myself, one day I'm going to run a 50-mile race through the mountains. Now, it's not Copper Canyon down in Mexico like the book is, but it is a 50-mile race through the mountains. So God willingly, and the creek doesn't overflow between here and there, I'm going to get to toe the line at a 50-miler, which I've always wanted to do. And Born to Run as a precursor, and kind of flip the switch and said I could do this. And then Born to Run 2 with a lot of the trainings and exercises and maintenance and all that stuff that comes from that training guide. That's why those books are the book recommendations today, because like I said, Born to Run is the reason why, that first lit an initial spark in me saying, hey, I can do 50 miles. I know I can, and I will someday. And that was years ago. And here we are getting ready. Less than a week now, 4 days till I toe the line, so I'm excited, nervous, everything all mixed in one.
I'm sure.
But anyways, so that's it. You got anything else for me?
Oh, man. I guess just probably for myself, for everybody else, we wish you luck this weekend. Hope you're able to create that perfect race day scenario that you planned out in your head. But, nothing's ever perfect. So, but if you need something during the downtimes, just give a holler. give a holler. We'll be there for you. Like I said, remind your wife that I'm going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll remind her, and we'll see. There'll be a full race review episode. It probably won't be the right afterwards, just due to recording and timing and all the other stuff. But there will be an episode here in the next couple that will be a full race recap.
For sure. Looking forward to that. So, anything else for you? Parting words on the way out?
Nah, man. Just never settle. Keep living the full force life.
All right. Well, never settle. That's right. Everybody get out there, continue to live the full force life. If you like the show, share it. Please give us a comment, review, give it a 5-star rating if you're enjoying the content. Get it out to as many dads as we can. Brett, good luck this weekend, and we'll see you next week.